Well, then, it is true that the capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice, according to Brian Herbert. What we have learned has made a tremendous contribution to our daily lives. This will serve as our foundation for our future career. Teachers do everything just so we can learn. Now, how do they know if we students have really learned something? Now, let us witness how a curriculum is evaluated by the educators as we go on to this chapter, evaluating the curriculum. And kindly internalize every word being discussed to know the curriculum evaluation through learning assessment. Well, as a presenter, I have my objectives here as my guide on what am I going to discuss. But first, let us define what is evaluation. I define evaluation as a social or technical process of gathering data to make judgment. Moreover, it leads to a conclusion for knowing what specific course or field an individual may be good into. Educators do the evaluation to us students because here the educators will know what course or field we can take depending on the results of the evaluation. Then next, let us define assessment. Assessment is the process of knowing and evaluating an individual's achievement with assessment tools. So later on, we will know that different assessment tools. This is prepared for getting data that's utilized for making choices around student and help them guide further decision in choosing core for future career. Assessment tools were used during an assessment. And learning assessment is defined as strategies to determine whether the students have learned something, and this also demonstrates if the learners have met the curriculum outcomes. Curriculum evaluation, as we have defined the evaluation, so now we can know what curriculum evaluation is. So curriculum evaluation is when the curriculum is satisfying or fulfilling its purpose and whether the students are actually learning. We have here learning outcomes. Learning outcomes describe the knowledge or skills students should acquire by the end of a particular assignment, class, course, or program, and help students understand why that knowledge and those skills will be useful to them. For you to understand it well, let me say this in Tagalog. I define learning outcomes as inaasahan ng mga guro na magagawa ng mga estudyante pagkatapos ng leksyon. Ito ay nakaugnay sa mga educational objectives and for example nito, this or some of the example of learning outcomes. The students will be able to understand the key concept of statistics. So this is what the teacher expected students will do or they will understand after discussing the lesson. Then identify a range of works of art and artists. So the student can now identify after the lesson. And also analyze the role of art and of the artist in at this time. How does a teacher know that the students have learned? Assessment of learning is an evaluation process that tells whether the intended learning outcomes through teaching learning process have been converted into achieved learning outcomes. The goal is to start with the learning objectives and then design assessments that provide evidence of the learning you want to be demonstrated. The assessment that best suited to guide improvements in student learning are the quizzes, tests, also writing assignments, and other assessments that teachers administer on a regular basis in their classroom. Teachers also trust their students for the results of the assessments because of their direct relation to classroom instructional goals. Now we have here the PQF. So let us discuss PQF. The Philippine Qualification Framework describes the level of educational qualifications and set the standards for qualification outcomes. It is a quality-assured national system for the development, recognition, and award of qualification based on standard of knowledge, skills, and values acquired in different ways and methods by learners and workers of the country. If you still have a hard time understanding what PQF is, then let us define qualification. What is qualification? Qualification refers to the formal certification that a person has successfully achieved specific learning outcomes relevant to the identified academic, industry, or community requirements. A qualification confers official recognition of value in the labor market and in further education and training. So now, we can say that Philippine Qualification Framework sets the standard for us to be qualified for a specific job or get an award in school. So here is the Filipino Qualification Framework. Now, what? So what is PQF? Again, it is a reference system of national standards of qualifications earned by individuals educated and trained in the Philippines. So who are these people involved with PQF? It is governed by the PQF National Coordinating Council, composed of the Department of Education or the DepEd, and Commission on Higher Education, the CHED, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, the TESDA, and Professional Regulations Commission, the PRC, and Department of Labor and Employment, the DOLE. It is for employers, workers, teachers, and learners, parents and governments who wish to understand Philippine qualifications and compare them with others. So why? Its objective is to establish national standards and levels of qualifications to assist and support academic and worker mobility and to address job skills mismatch. How? It outlines what an individual has learned and can do based on qualification type, levels, and degrees of competency. So who will benefit with Philippine Qualification Framework? We have here the learners, workers, and the professionals, and also the employers and industry. Of course, the academe and government, and most especially, all Filipinos. We have here the levels of domain. There are 3 domains of level of competency. First is the knowledge, skills, and values. Second is the application, and third is the responsibility, this defined as a degree of independence. Take a look with this table. As you can see, the level 1 and level 2. The competencies or the students upgraded as they go on to level 2. Next is, we also have here the 3 domain. We can also observe the same as the level 1 and level 2 as the competency goes with level 8. The students become highly independent or apply professional work and research as a leader, and also their skills has an improvement. Here with specific level and the description of learning outcomes, it has its own guide questions for teachers. And this question is a kind of student-centered learning, for it focuses for students that the educators really need to show some evidences for achieving the learning outcomes. ARQF, or the ASEAN Reference Qualifications Framework. So ARQF is defined as a tool or device that enables comparisons of qualifications across ASEAN member states. It addresses education and training to promote lifelong learning. The ARQF aims to support and enhance each country's NQF or qualification system while providing a mechanism to facilitate comparison, transparency, and higher quality qualification system. The ARQF aims to support lifelong learning and the mobility of workers and learners. So here are the 10 members of ASEAN: the Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Darussalam, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, PDR, and Vietnam. So here is how PQF and AQRF compared. Okay, now how learning outcomes be measured through the use of assessment tools. So now we will have the assessment tools, but before we know the different assessment tools, we will have the K-pop first, or the KPUP, the knowledge process, understanding, product, or performance. So here are the assessment tools. As we go on to this lesson, we will discuss the K-12 grading system. The K-12 basic education program uses a standards and competency-based grading system. These are found in the curriculum guides, and all grades will be based on the weighted row score of the learner's summative assessments. And we have here, okay, then these were the types of tests to measure knowledge, process, and understanding. The objective test. These are the tests that require only one correct answer. The objective test, some of it are pencil and paper tests. I know we are all familiar with this test. The test is written on the paper and requires a pencil to write. Then also the simple recall. This is the most common tool to measure knowledge. These are varieties of simple recall tests to include. Some example of this are enumeration, identification, simple recall, fill in the blanks. And we also have alternative response test. This is a type of pencil and paper test where two options are provided. Examples are true or false and yes or no. Then we have multiple choice test. This is the type identified as the most versatile test, right? Because it can measure a variety of learning outcomes. And as distractors for the choices, we have the distractors or decoys. And we have here the types of objective tests, the correct answer type. And other alternatives are clearly wrong and only one is the correct answer. This can be constructed in either direct question or completion of the sentence. Example of it is what is not a member of ASEAN 2015 Economic Community. So you will only choose what in the choices who doesn't belong. Then the best answer type. From the name itself, all the alternatives are correct but only one is the best. Example is here, and then the matching type test. This is the most common matching type is made up of two parallel columns. The first column A as the premise that presents the problem and the second column B that provides the answer. And here is an example. And also the perfect matching type. So for you to understand it well, here is an example. In column A are popular description of president during their term of office. So it's the number of premises in column A is less than the number of responses in column B. We have the imperfect matching type is the number of premises in column A are not equal to the number of the responses in column B, or the other way around. So look at this example, and we have the subjective test. So learning outcomes which indicate learners' ability to originate and express ideas is difficult to test through objective type test. Example of subjective test is essay test item. The essay test items allow students to freedom of responses. And the restricted response item. Restricted response item is like an expanded form of short answer type objective test. We are like expanding the idea. This also measures our understanding of the lesson. So here are the examples. And we have here the extend response item. Is one student is generally free to select any factual information that can help in organizing the response. So here is the type of essay that measure complex learning. The restricted response essay items and the extended response essay items. And the authentic evaluation, it is the test that measures real-life tasks, performances, and actual products. The most common of the authentic assessments are the performance assessment and the use of portfolio. So here are the example checklists and the use of microscope. We have here the performance assessment tools, the rating scale. It is a tool that uses a scale in a number line as a bias to estimate the numerical value of a product performance or a product. Here is the example. And we have here the rubrics for portfolio. It is a compilation of the experiences as authentic learning outcomes presented with evidences and reflections. The levels of assessment is the description of the levels of the learning outcomes, which are knowledge, process or skill, understanding, products, or performance. So here with different level 1, 2, 3, and what to test or assess, the type of assessment, and the percentage value in assessment. We have here the table of specification. If you also have the assessment learning one or the subject that requires you to make table of specification, then you have an idea for this. So table of specification developed to help the teachers in test construction. It should reflect the levels of learning outcomes provided. The sample matrix of the periodical summative test result in third quarter and the level of proficiency. So level of proficiency is the interpretation is used for all the learning areas or subjects in basic education. So here, it is also kind of knowing how proficient your student is. And here, so the general average shall be average of the final grades of the different learning areas, also expressed in terms of levels of proficiency with the numerical equivalent in parentheses that I said. The assessment process is holistic and aims to ensure the quality of student learning with emphasis on formation and development, as Louis said. So we have here the Adopted Order 73, Section 2012. Guidelines on the assessment and rating of learning outcomes under the K-12 basic education curriculum. This is for the undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, and etc. And it aims for an effective school year 2012 to 2013. The standards-based assessment and rating system shall be implemented to support the progressive rollout starting with grade 1 and 7 of the K-12 basic education curriculum in public and private elementary and secondary school nationwide. And also this is one of the guidelines. Then we have the immediate dissemination of and strict compliance with this order is directed.